Chapter 31. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. A Night of Magic Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The arrangement sent by the agency actually didn't have this high note, but when Luo Ying heard the song, she felt that if she could add a high note at the beginning, it would draw in the audience and raise the atmosphere of the song. Hence, she had added this high note on her own accord. It could only be said that Luo Ying, as a top singer who was good at singing and dancing, had a very good understanding of music, so the effect of this improvisation was like a nuclear bomb. However, this sudden change had undoubtedly caused Su Ran, who was sharing the stage with her, to suffer. She was already a little slow because she had been distracted, and then she was shocked by Luo Ying's voice. Her hand movements became messy. Su Ran became even more anxious, and her movements became even stiffer. Unlike her, Luo Ying was quite calm and composed. Every movement and every extension was on point, and her movements were clean and neat. It was not an exaggeration to call her a star. The contrast between the two of them was very obvious. Su Ran had obviously noticed this problem, but she was not a professional singer, after all. She lacked stage experience, so even if she had noticed the issue, she did not know how to adjust it in the head of the moment. The prelude of the song was almost finished, and the song was about to start. According to the arrangement, the first line should have been sung by Su Ran. However, judging by her flustered expression, it was obvious that she had lost her way. Luo Ying glanced at her out of the corner of her eye, then raised the microphone and started singing. Su Ran only realized the problem after the metronome in her ear was fired. She quickly picked up the microphone and started singing, but she was still 2 beats too slow. She subconsciously looked at Luo Ying. Luo Ying subtly skipped to the rhythm, and as she moved, she guided Su Ran back to the original beat. At that moment, the bullets were very lively. Many of them were attracted by Luo Ying's looks and performance. "You're amazing. So beautiful, so skilled. I love you." There were also some who were shocked by her sudden improvement. "Luo Ying is blowing my mind. Is she really singing? Who said Luo Ying couldn't do it? This is such a slap to your face, ha. Is this really the Luo Ying I know?" But no matter what they thought, Luo Ying, on the stage, was blowing up the atmosphere. Su Ran was getting worried. Oh my God, what a tragic comparison. Is she here to be funny? Some fans still defended Su Ran. Su Ran is an actress. It's already very impressive that she has the courage to perform on stage. You can't judge her by professional standards. In the end, he was directly rebuked by a passerby. She's an actress. Why is she singing and dancing on the stage? She can't dance well, but she still insisted on dancing. She dug her own grave. They finally reached Luo Ying's part, which was the part Lu Zhao had seen through the door yesterday. Luo Ying had gone deep into the zone. She was in a state of extreme excitement. There were no distractions, no thoughts in her mind, only the music and dance steps. She sang to her heart's content, danced to her heart's content, and showed off her charm to the camera to her heart's content. At that moment, Lu Zhao turned on his phone to watch the live broadcast. Yesterday, her performance had blown his mind. The director had focused the camera on Luo Ying. Luo Ying's eyes were directly staring into the camera, and Lu Zhao got twice the shock, compared to yesterday. Luo Ying winked at the camera, and Lu Zhao's hand on the chair clenched up, his breathing becoming heavier. Even though he had already seen it once and was mentally prepared, it still hit him hard in the heart. Lu Zhao only felt a surge of agitation in his body. His mouth felt a little dry. He couldn't help but pick up the cold water on the table and gulp it down in 2 mouthfuls, but he still couldn't suppress the restlessness in his body. Instead, it only grew more intense as Luo Ying danced in the camera. Even the calm, stoic Lu Zhao was losing his mind. The audience watching the live broadcast were barely conscious. Their hearts were racing, as if they were completely out of breath. It wasn't until the director cut the camera to Sue Ran that the atmosphere suddenly shattered. They finally remembered to breathe, and their fingers hurriedly worked to type S. The screen was filled with a flood of S. Many years later, this classic performance, which was the rebirth of Luo Ying's career, was still often replayed and talked about with relish. Chapter 32. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Massive surge in fans. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. By the end of the song, Luo Ying was gasping for breath, staring out into the audience. The feeling of going all out on stage was just exhilarating. As expected, she still loved the stage. Luo Ying smiled at the camera. This smile wasn't a perfunctory smile from that supermodels had been trained to tune in for the camera, like cogs falling into place, but a sincere smile from the heart. It wasn't picture-perfect, but it was infectious. People could easily feel Luo Ying's love for the stage. Many people looked at her and couldn't help but smile with her. Why did you help me just now? After they got off the stage, Sue Ran stopped Luo Ying with a dark face. Were you doing it out of pity? Luo Ying rolled her eyes. Don't overcomplicate everything. I just didn't want this stage to be destroyed. After she finished speaking, she walked past Sue Ran and returned to the rest area. This time, the naysayers she met along the way dared not meet her eyes. You were glorious, you lit the stage up. In the dressing room, Annie gave her a hug. Luo Ying was a little flattered. I'll have to thank you and your teacher for that. Annie seemed indifferent. It's fine. Lu Zhao paid us well. The tip of Luo Ying's ears twitched. You know Lu Zhao well. A hint of disdain flashed across Annie's eyes. Who wants to know a massive iceberg like him? We just happened to be classmates for a while. Luo Ying criticized her in her heart. Annie was not much different, in terms of Ice.Queen demeanors. She happily took out her phone. Why don't we add each other as good friends? We can chat when we're free. This way, she could indirectly learn more about Lu Zhao's school days. After watching the live broadcast, Lu Zhao, who was buried in work again, suddenly shivered. He frowned and turned to Xiao Ting. Increase the temperature in the room. At that moment, he had no idea that his embarrassing school days were about to be uncovered. After ending her performance with a bang and making it to several trending lists, Luo Ying went home happily. She ended up in a cold, dark room. Where's Lu Zhao? She searched the bedroom, the study, and the gym, but couldn't find Lu Zhao. She could only turn to Zhang. It's so late, is he still working overtime at the company? Zhang was a little confused. Didn't Sir go on a business trip? Luo Ying felt hurt for a second. Why didn't you tell me that he had a business trip? Zhang had no choice but to remind her. Sir left you a note. It's on the bedside table next to the bedroom. Is that so? I didn't see it. Luo Ying blinked innocently. She had slept all the way until dawn and even went to the rehearsal room to practice a few songs. After that, she had been busy with her makeup and wardrobe, so she never noticed the note on the bedside table at all. What era is it now? He's still leaving notes. What's the use of his phone? Luo Ying said, as she ran up to the second floor. She did not know that Lu Zhao did not even intend to leave a note. After all, Luo Ying never cared about his existence, including his comings and goings. Only in the past few days did their relationship suddenly improve. Luo Ying seemed to have changed overnight. He was afraid that if Luo Ying woke up and couldn't find him, she would throw a tantrum again, so he left a note. It was a brief, simple line. I'm going on a business trip abroad and will be back in 3 days. Humph, wretched man, you can't even say that you'll miss me. You're so boring. Although Luo Ying uttered those displeased words, she still kept the note in the drawer. She turned on her phone and sent Lu Zhao a message. Why didn't you tell me that you were on a business trip? I rushed home happily and didn't see you. I'm so sad. She added a sad emoji at the end. Lu Xiao was stunned for a moment when he saw the message. He didn't expect her to really care about where he had gone. He held his phone and scrolled through it before finally replying, I left you a note. Luoying felt wronged. I didn't see it. You didn't look for me today. I'm crying. Lu Xiao pursed his lips, thinking that she was the one who hadn't contacted him today, but in the end, he only replied with one sentence. I'm busy. Luoying pursed her lips. I won't keep you from your work. Remember to rest early. Lu Xiao wanted to mention that he was overseas right now, and it was afternoon here. However, it had been a long time since someone had been this thoughtful about him like this. His finger swiped across the short message, and warmth emerged in Lu Xiao's heart. After Luoying sent that perfunctory message, she put down her phone and went into the bathroom to fill the bathtub. She was ready to soak and unwind. This body had been neglected for too long. Over the past 2 days, she had put it through intense training, so her entire being was sore. Now that the performance was finally over, she could finally relax. Chapter 33 You are listening at NovelFull.audio. I want to hug you to sleep translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. After the bathtub was filled, Luoying soaked in it with her tablet. She watched the feedback of her performance. After a few hours, her red carpet and stage shots had been widely circulated on all major platforms, with high views and shares. The aftermath had been tremendous. In just a few hours, she had almost gained 100,000 fans. 100,000 fans was nothing, compared to those top celebrities who had tens of millions of fans. However, these were not fans that she had bought with money. They were 100,000 genuine fans, and they meant far more. As her popularity continued to ferment, the number of her fans would continue to grow over the next few days. No one could predict how much more they would rise. Luoying was very satisfied with these results. When the water was almost cold, Luoying finally climbed out of the bathtub. At that moment, she saw Lu Xiao's reply on her phone. It was a simple sentence. You too. How boring. Luoying deleted the message, then logged into the social platform and posted one of her red carpet shots. It immediately received a lot of S and shares. Every time she refreshed her account, she could see that the number of fans was constantly increasing. After reading the netizens' praise for her, Luoying gamed happily on her tablet. After playing for some time, she finally felt tired. She looked at the time and saw that it was already past midnight, past her usual sleeping time. Luoying immediately got up, tore open a sleep mask, and put it on her face. Then, she lay back in bed and massaged her neck with some cream while sending a message to Lu Xiao. I can't sleep alone. I miss you so much. Lu Xiao had just sent off a guest who came to visit at the last minute when he heard his phone's notification. He turned on his phone and instructed Xiao Ting, that guy was just tiptoeing around the subject. Postpone the project for now. If he doesn't speak plainly, we're pulling out. He has. Xiao Ting, who was following behind him, was quickly jotting down his words on his phone when he suddenly saw Lu Xiao stop. He looked up and saw Lu Xiao's eyes staring at his phone. Sir. He gave a light reminder. Lu Xiao came back to his senses, and the thoughts in his mind were connected again. He continued, cancel all the discounts we promised before and contact their head. Alright, I'll remember that. Xiao Ting glanced at his work notes. Do you have any other instructions? I want to rest for a while. If there's nothing urgent, don't disturb me for the time being. Lu Xiao entered the study and closed the door tightly, his eyes still fixed on the text message Luoying had just sent. In the past, Luoying would argue with him every day, and it drove him up the wall. Now, Luoying was bothering him even more. However, they gave him completely different emotions. Luo Ying saw that he didn't reply, so she added. Sleep with me, okay? Lu Zhao's breath caught in his throat. Her words were too ambiguous, as if she was sending some kind of signal. Lu Zhao couldn't help but start a video call. He wanted to see her and hear her voice. As soon as the video call request popped up, Luo Ying immediately threw aside her lotions and creams and sat up on the bed. She ripped off the mask on her face, patted her skin down with a tissue, and then turned off the bedroom light, leaving only the dim yellow bedside lamp on. For good measure, she ruffled up the pillow. After a series of smooth and natural movements, in less than 5 seconds, she got back into bed, lay sideways on the pillow, and then answered the video call. The screen lit up, and Lu Zhao saw Luo Ying lying on the pillow, pouting and looking at him with a wronged expression. A meatball had been squeezed out of her pouting face by the pillow, and under the dim yellow light, it was pink and tender, looking extremely cute. Lu Zhao's hand itched. He wanted to go through the screen and poke the meatball. When she saw Lu Zhao's stunned expression, Luo Ying was extremely pleased. As an actress and idol who had received strict training, she was an expert at filming. Naturally, she knew how to work lights, cameras, and her face. Sigh, she was already trying so hard. When would this man fall into her hands? On the surface, she still maintained her aggrieved expression and coyly said, I can't hug you to sleep. The bed is so empty. When are you coming back? I've missed you so much. Chapter 34. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Coax Me to Sleep Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, what do you want me to do? I can't go back now. Luo Ying's voice was almost addictive, causing the disquiet in Lu Zhao's body to flare up again. Why don't you tell me a story? I might be able to fall asleep if I listen to your voice, Luo Ying said coquettishly. Lu Zhao was speechless. Isn't telling stories something that only parents do to their children? Are you trying to be my daughter? He couldn't help but complain. Luo Ying thought about it for a moment. That wasn't impossible. After all, she had a responsible, rich, and handsome father like Lu Zhao. She should be very happy to be his daughter. Thus, Luo Ying threw a flirtatious look at the camera and said in a coy voice, then, Daddy Lu, can you tell me a story and put me to sleep? Lu Zhao, who had lived for 25 years and still had no experience in relationships, was just making a casual remark. He didn't expect Luo Ying to be so thick-skinned and take advantage of the situation, even role-playing with him. As soon as Luo Ying called him Daddy Lu, his breathing became heavier, and his ears turned red. He chided softly, stop messing around. If your father were to hear this, he would say that you're an unfilial daughter. Hee hee. Luo Ying grinned and chuckled. She brought the camera closer and said in a low voice, then I'll just call you Daddy secretly under the blanket. Let's not let him hear it, okay? A certain scene appeared in Lu Zhao's mind. Luo Ying was lying under him, calling him Daddy with her charming eyes and begging him for mercy. His Adam's apple bobbed, and he felt the fire that he had just suppressed reignite and spread throughout his body. Seeing that Luo Ying was still looking at him expectantly, Lu Zhao forced himself to look away. That's enough. As soon as he opened his mouth, he realized that there was something wrong with his voice. He could only cough twice and clear his throat before continuing, didn't you say you wanted me to tell you a story? What story do you want to hear? When he looked away, he didn't notice Luo Ying's silent laughter on the other side of the video. He only heard Luo Ying cheerfully say, then I want to listen to Little Tadpoles Looking for Their Mother. Read this story to me. As soon as Lu Zhao heard the childish title, he felt as if his childhood memories had suddenly awakened, and all the ambiguous bubbles from just now burst. He sighed. Okay, I'll read it to you. You can sleep quietly, okay? Otherwise, if this vixen continued to cause trouble, he really wouldn't get anything done today. Okay, I promise to sleep. Luo Ying immediately lay down and put her phone next to her pillow. Lu Xiao searched for the story on the internet and then read it word by word. He thought he would have to read a few more books, but he didn't expect that Luo Ying had already closed her eyes and fallen asleep halfway through the passage. She had just complained about how she couldn't sleep, but in the blink of an eye, she was already fast asleep. Lu Xiao still finished the story, and then quietly looked at Luo Ying. In the end, he didn't hang up the video call. Instead, he put the phone on the stand and placed it in front of the desk. He found a Bluetooth headset and connected it, turning it on silent mode. This way, he could see Luo Ying at a glance while he was working without waking her up. Then, he opened the door and went out. He instructed Xiao Ting, "Help me schedule my work. For the urgent matters, prioritize them. As for the other secondary matters, put them at the back. You must finish everything by today and then arrange a flight back to China." "Did something happen to the company in China?" Xiao Ting asked. According to their original schedule, they still had more than 2 days on their journey. If it wasn't for something particularly urgent, Lu Xiao usually wouldn't change his schedule so easily. Lu Xiao paused for a moment, the corners of his lips lifting slightly. "No, someone is waiting for me to go back." At first, Xiao Ting was madly guessing in his mind whether the old crooks in the company were being up to no good again. He did not expect to hear such an answer. He was silent for a few seconds and complained madly in his heart. Could it be that troublesome madam again? However, even if he had 100 ironclad stomachs, he would not dare to say it out loud. He could only reply respectfully, "All right, sir. I'll see to it at once." Chapter 35. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Crying and Begging for Forgiveness. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. On the other hand, Luo Ying still didn't know that Lu Xiao had changed his schedule at the last minute because of her coquettish words and was working overtime desperately. She was tired from the day before and had a very deep sleep that night. She slept comfortably until dawn. She woke up in the warm bed and felt that she had been stretched from head to toe. When she turned around, she realized that her phone was dead. Luo Ying was very confused. She didn't remember using her phone much yesterday. How did it run out of battery so quickly? Was it broken? She shook her head, thinking that if that was the case, she would have to get a new phone. She charged her phone and turned it back on. Only then did she realize that she had called Lu Xiao for more than 7 hours last night. So after she fell asleep last night, Lu Xiao didn't hang up the video call. Luo Ying's toes curled up under the blanket. She felt a little warm glow in her heart, but at the same time, she felt a little embarrassed. She was so tired yesterday. She didn't snore when she slept, did she? She didn't say anything in her sleep that she shouldn't have said, right? Forget it, I'll just pretend to not know. Luo Ying gave up and threw her phone on the bed. She ran into the bathroom to wash up and had a comfortable breakfast. Just as she was thinking about what to do today, the police station suddenly called. Officer Ho's voice came from the other end of the phone. "We found some of Tian's purchase records, but she's denying it. She also asked to see you. So, if it's convenient for you, can you come to the police station?" Luo Ying thought about it for a moment. She really had nothing to do today, so she agreed. After a day and 2 nights of questioning, although Tian had been stubborn and refused to give in, it was clear that this incident had traumatized her. She looked as if she had suddenly aged 10 years. The moment she saw Luo Ying, a murderous look flashed across Tian's eyes. However, she immediately remembered that her future was still in Luo Ying's hands, so she immediately restrained her murderous intent and put on a pitiful look. "Ying, you're finally here. Tell the police that I didn't do this." It's all a misunderstanding. Since she wanted to act, Luo Ying decided to play along with her. "The police just told me that it all matches up to your purchase record. There was also a camera hidden in the pearl earrings you gave me. How can I believe you? Luo Ying sobbed. Tian, we grew up together, and I've always treated you as my best friend. Why do you have to treat me like this? I know I've gone too far, but I did it because I was worried about you, Tian pleaded while crying. Lu Zhao's so scary. I was afraid he'd do something to you if you pissed him off, so I had to keep an eye on you. Luo Ying did not look convinced. If it's really like what you said, that you're worried about me, then you could have just warned me. Why did you hide it from me? Tian was stunned. I was afraid that if I told you, you'd raise Lu Zhao's suspicions. If that happened, all these cameras and bugs would have been installed for nothing. As soon as Tian said these words, the police officers outside the door subconsciously avoided her gaze. Who would believe such a poor excuse? But apparently, some people were more gullible than most. Luo Ying bit her lip and hesitated. Are you telling the truth? You're not lying to me again, are you? Seeing that her attitude had softened, Tian was overjoyed. Think about it, we've been friends for so many years. What good would it do me to harm you? Luo Ying answered her in her heart, of course, you'd get Lu Zhao. My mind is in a mess right now. I don't know if I should believe you or not. Let me think about it. Luo Ying covered her head and turned her head away, not willing to look at her again, as if she was afraid that her heart would soften. After so many years, don't you know how I feel about you? Tian rolled up her sleeves and asked, do you still remember this scar? Luo Ying turned around and looked at the scar on her arm that was almost an inch long. She pursed her lips and said nothing, but she had a question mark in her heart. The original novel never mentioned such details, so Luo Ying knew nothing about it. In order to prevent herself from being exposed, she could only pretend to be in pain. Acting as if she was immersed in her memories, Tian said, this is the scar left behind when I was 12 years old, trying to catch you when you fell from the tree. I was even willing to give up my life for you. Why are you still doubting my feelings for you? Chapter 36 You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Come to see me translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Luo Ying was a little shocked. It turned out that the two of them shared such a history. She stood up in a flash. I don't know if you're telling the truth or not, but for the sake of our past relationship, I'll let this matter go. After she finished speaking, she covered her face and ran away, crying. The female police officer, An Chui, saw Luo Ying out of the police station. When she saw her sad face, she tactfully advised her, you can't judge a book by its cover. Sometimes, you can't even tell if the person you're sleeping with is a human or a wolf, let alone a friend. Luo Ying thanked her. Actually, I know that Tian has really gone overboard this time. However, her feelings for me are genuine too. So, I can't really send her to jail. Upon seeing her innocent look, An Chui sighed in her heart. When she returned to the police station, she sighed to Officer Ho. Only rich families would raise innocent princesses like Luo Ying. Officer Ho's lips curled up. In his mind, An Chui was the innocent one. As a senior police officer who had been fighting on the front line for more than 20 years, Officer Ho had developed a pair of sharp eyes. Although Luo Ying and Tian were pouring out their hearts to each other, even the best actors in the world would not escape his eyes. Luo Ying drove out of the parking lot. When she passed by the entrance of the police station, she glanced inside and smiled sardonically. This was just an appetizer. Luo Ying knew that Tian did come from a considerably powerful family. Even if she insisted on filing the lawsuit, Tian would be sentenced to 3 years in prison at most. If the Tian family spent more money, the sentence would be even shorter. If the Tian family were to create grounds for her to require medical care, Tian might not even need to go to prison. When she recalled what Tian had done to the original Luo Ying in the book, Luo Ying sneered. This punishment was too light. In the original novel, the male protagonist Lin Su, the female protagonist Su Ran, the original Luo Ying's step-mother and step-sister, her best friend Tian Tian, and some other female cannon fodder were all accomplices that led to the original Luo Ying's death. None of them were innocent, so she would not let Tian Tian off so easily. Coincidentally, Luo Ying had just thought of the male lead, Lin Su, when his phone call came. Luo Ying glanced at it and lazily picked up the phone. "Mr. Lin, what's the matter?" After Lin Su got through, he did not waste any time. He said directly, "I'm in my office on the top floor. Come over now." When she heard his commanding tone, Luo Ying didn't say a word and hung up the phone. Who did he think he was, to actually dare to speak to her like this? Lin Su had thought that as long as he asked, Luo Ying would run over to him as she used to. However, he didn't expect Luo Ying to hang up on him as soon as he uttered one sentence. He called back angrily. "Luo Ying, what are you doing? How dare you hang up on me?" Luo Ying smirked. "Oh, Mr. Lin. So you do know who you're talking to. You didn't even say anything and just barked out orders. I thought you called the wrong number and mistook me as one of your assistants." Lin Su choked and said faintly, "You're an artiste under our company. Aren't you my subordinate?" This time, it was Luo Ying's turn to curse. It was all the original Luo Ying's fault. In order to get closer to Lin Su, she had actually signed a contract with his company. This had put her in a difficult position. She was displeased about it. She snorted coldly and spoke like TikTok's text-to-speech. Then, "Dear boss Lin, what be thy bidding?" Lin Su was upset. The sarcasm stabbed him deep in the heart. "Come to my office right now." Luo Ying exclaimed, "Boss Lin, you're suddenly calling your employee up. Are you trying to cut a deal, one under the desk perhaps? I don't remember the contract we signed to have included this." "The hell are you saying?" Lin Su gritted his teeth. "When did you become so eloquent? Since you're so good at talking, why don't I throw you into some talk show so that you can display your talents?" Luo Ying was overjoyed. "Thank you, boss, for giving me this job opportunity. Let's get rich together." Chapter 37. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Threat Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Lin Su's anger soared. He could not help but raise his voice, "I'm not joking with you. Come over immediately and bring your things along." Lin Su paused for a moment and emphasized, "You do know what I'm talking about, right? I'll only give you an hour. You'd better get there on time, or else," he paused deliberately, "you don't want to know the consequences." Luo Ying slammed her hand on the steering wheel and hung up the phone. "Pfft, then just you wait." Originally, she was quite close to the company and only needed less than 10 minutes to drive there. But Lin Su's arrogant tone made her very unhappy, so Luo Ying turned the steering wheel and drove to another place. When she was browsing the news in the same city last night, she saw a popular food blogger recommending a new local dessert shop. He swore with his life that it was the best thing he had ever tasted, so Luo Ying decided to give it a go. After Lin Su hung up the phone, he set an hour-long alarm to see if Luo Ying could arrive within an hour. He waited and waited. An hour had almost passed, but Luo Ying was still nowhere to be seen. He was getting more and more annoyed. At the last minute, when the alarm was about to ring, he immediately picked up his phone and called Luo Ying. The first thing he said was, "You're late. Prepare to be punished." In the next second, there was a knock on the door, and the door was pushed open. He looked up and saw Luo Ying wearing a floral dress, a velvet hat, and a pair of brown sunglasses. Her white skin, red lips, and the sunlight that shone in from behind made her look fresh and beautiful, like a fairy among the flowers. Lin Su was stunned for a moment. Then, he saw Luo Ying waving the phone in her hand with a faint smile on her face. 3 more seconds. I'm not late. As soon as she finished speaking, the alarm clock that Lin Su had just set rang immediately, proving that Luo Ying was indeed not late. He turned off the alarm clock with a blank expression. Where is it? Luo Ying took out an envelope from her bag and threw it on his desk. The chip is inside. You can check it yourself. Lin Su's fingers pressed on the envelope, but he didn't open it to check. Instead, he stared at Luo Ying. How do I know if you have other copies? Luo Ying puffed up her cheeks and took a sip of the milk tea in her hand. She was amused. Yeah, how can you be sure that I don't have a backup? Would you believe me if I said I didn't? If I say I do, would you believe me? Lin Su's face was dark. I don't know what's on your mind. I can't trust you. Oh. Luo Ying shrugged her shoulders slightly. Then that's your problem. It has nothing to do with me. Seeing that she was about to leave, Lin Su said, sign a confidentiality agreement. As if she had heard a ridiculous joke, Luo Ying sneered and turned to look at him. Lin Su, do you really think you can control my fate? Lin Su clasped his hands and placed them on the table, looking like he was ready to negotiate. If you're not guilty, then why don't you dare to sign this contract? Unfortunately, Luo Ying didn't fall for his goading. Didn't your mother tell you that you can't say things randomly and you can't sign things randomly? Lin Su threatened her. Do you know that it's illegal for you to hold that thing in your hand? Oh, you totally should call the police. Luo Ying squeezed out a bright smile. I welcome you to use the law to protect your own interests, provided that you can, and if Miss Su is willing to let the world see her naked ass. She was someone who had gone to college. Lin Su really thought that she was ignorant of the law. When he saw that she truly did not care, Lin Su's face turned black. Aren't you afraid that I'll ban you? Your contract hasn't expired yet. Luo Ying retorted sarcastically, if that's all you can do, then do as you please. She would not gain anything by remaining in this lousy company. She was already lucky that she had not been used as a stepping stone for another rising star. Seeing that both hard and soft tactics did not work, Lin Su slammed the desk in anger. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, what if I agree to be with you? What? Luo Ying couldn't help but pick her ear. Say it again. I didn't hear you. Chapter 38 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Know Thyself Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. A trace of humiliation flashed across Lin Su's face. He pursed his lips and repeated his words. Su Ran's dream was to have a place in the entertainment industry, so her records had to remain clean. For Su Ran's sake, Lin Su would rather put himself in a difficult position and accede to Luo Ying, agreeing to her conditions. Luo Ying stood where she was. She felt such intense second-hand embarrassment on his behalf that her toes curled up. Lin Su, are you selling yourself for Su Ran? Lin Su didn't like the word sell that she used. Isn't this what you've always wanted? As long as you sign this confidentiality agreement, I can promise to meet you once a week. Thank you, but there's no need. What do you mean by that? Lin Su was very angry. He had already lowered his status to this extent. What was Luo Ying not satisfied with? He stood up, forced Luo Ying to the corner, and gave her a warning. It's better not to be too greedy. Luo Ying was so angry that she cackled. Mr. Lin, didn't you learn the famous words of Socrates when you were in school? Know thyself. She poked Lin Su's chest with her finger and pushed him away. Who gave you the confidence to rate yourself so highly? Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning? Lin Su was as confused as he was furious. Are you sure you're not joking? Luo Ying raised her eyebrows. Why? Do you really think that you are the treasure of the universe and that everyone is fighting over you? When she saw Lin Su standing there in a daze with a look of disbelief, Luo Ying was too lazy to argue with him. Whatever, I will not sign any confidentiality agreement. She dusted her hands. Don't worry. I'm not interested in either you or Su Ran. I won't dirty my hands for you. She would look for an opportunity to trample on these people, but she would not use such a method. Luo Ying said it so casually, as if what happened between him and Su Ran was really not worth mentioning in her heart. Lin Su did not know why, but he suddenly panicked and subconsciously grabbed Luo Ying's hand. You're not allowed to leave. Luo Ying thought he was going to pester her again, so she gave him a backhanded slap. The sound of the slap reverberated throughout the entire office. Lin Su had never thought that Luo Ying would hit him. He instantly let go of Luo Ying's hand and froze in place. I've said it before. There's no clause in the contract that says I'll accept your touchy-feelers. Luo Ying turned her red wrist. Besides, I'm already married. What are you trying to pull? What if my husband finds out? What if he misunderstands? Luo Ying threw the almost finished milk tea into the trash can. Under the secretary's horrified gaze, she pressed the elevator button. Lin Su's roar and the sound of things smashing came from behind her, but she didn't even turn her head. As soon as the elevator door closed, Luo Ying immediately opened her palm and saw that it was red. She blew on it with heartache and thought to herself, it felt good just now, but his face is probably made of rock. Too many fillers. However, as red as her hand was, Lin Su's face should have fared worse. After all, she had used all her strength in the slap just now. Thinking of something, Luo Ying immediately took out her phone, took a photo of her reddened palm, and sent it to Lu Zhao with the caption. Hubby, it hurts. Hurry up and blow on it for me. As soon as the message was sent, the phone rang again. The caller ID showed that it was Luo Hao, the father of the original Luo Ying. They were not on good terms. It seemed that today was indeed an eventful day. Things came one after another. Luo Ying sighed with a tired heart and then picked up the phone. I heard from your Aunt Hong that you jumped off a building a few days ago just to force Lu Zhao to divorce you. How Luo's furious voice came out from the phone. Nope. Luo Ying denied. If not, then why did the Lu family cancel the project that our two families are working on? Is it because you've angered him? Nope again. Luo Hao didn't believe her. If you really didn't, then you should bring Lu Zhao back tonight. Lu Zhao went on a business trip. How can there be such a coincidence? I don't care. Luo Hao gave her an ultimatum. You have to bring Lu Zhao home tonight, or you won't be able to come back ever again. Chapter 39. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Not divorced translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Luo Hao's words were cruel enough. In the original Luo Ying's eyes, this father was only busy with his business. When she was very young, he never took notice of her and her brother. He only had eyes for her stepmother and step-sister. In the end, when they grew up, things go to the point where her brother was forced to run away from home. Since then, there had been no news of him. For the sake of the company's interests, the original Luo Ying was even forced to marry Lu Zhao, whom she didn't like, causing her a lot of pain. However, Luo Ying had read the novel, so she knew very well that Luo Hao was simply a father who didn't know how to express his feelings. He actually doted on his son and daughter, but he didn't know how to express his good intentions at all. Every time he said something, it would cause a quarrel between the two sides. The reason he was in such a hurry to marry the original to Lu Zhao was because he knew that he was sick, so he wanted to help the original Luo Ying find a good home. Then, he rushed to start the cooperation project with the Lu family, so that she and her brother could have more capital to establish themselves. Unfortunately, the original Luo Ying never learned about his good intentions. Instead, she was forced to walk on a different path. In his rush, Luo Hao made a critical mistake, bringing the company to ruin. His illness worsened, and he was eventually confined to the bed. After hearing the news of the original Luo Ying's death, he passed away from the shock. Luo Ying decided to go back. Where's Lu Zhao? Luo Hao poked his head out from the living room. When he saw that she was alone, he immediately frowned. Luo Ying took off her coat and handed it to a servant. Didn't I tell you? He's on a business trip abroad. Luo Hao was very unhappy that Lu Zhao didn't come. Then, call him. Right. Luo Ying took out her phone and made a video call, but no one picked up. Only then did she realize that Lu Zhao hadn't replied to the photo she had just sent. Luo Ying couldn't help but mumble in her heart. He had not replied to her messages, and he was not answering her video calls. Was Lu Zhao angry? Had she misspoke, last night? Seeing that there was no response from his phone, Luo Hao put his hands on his waist. What's wrong? Did Lu Zhao coincidentally stop accepting video calls? Her stepmother, Liao Hong, who was sitting at the side, echoed, Ying, you don't have to be stubborn. Our family isn't an open-minded family, but you got divorced, not long after you got married. It's not a good look for you, a lady. Luo Hao's anger rose to another level after being provoked by her. She doesn't know what's good for her. She doesn't even know how to appreciate someone like Lu Zhao, and she still wants to be a superstar. The two of them didn't seem to understand human language. If Luo Ying didn't care about Luo Hao's love for his daughter, would she have put up with them for so long? I told you, we're both fine. We're not divorced. Sister, you don't have to worry. Even if you're divorced and have nowhere to go, our family will always open the door for you. His stepsister, Luo Wan, came down the stairs. Luo Wan was certain that the two would definitely get a divorce. After all, she had specially inquired about it. Lu Zhao had seen Luo Ying and Lin Su's confession scene and was threatened by Luo Ying to a divorce, over the edge of a rooftop. She found it impossible for Lu Zhao to keep up with her. Luo Ying couldn't help but roll her eyes. This mother-daughter pair was determined to confirm her divorce with Lu Zhao. She spread her hands and said, yes, Lu Zhao and I are really going to get a divorce. We've even prepared the divorce agreement. When he comes back from his business trip, he'll sign it immediately. Before the mother and daughter could celebrate, Luo Hao stood up with a gust of wind, pointed at her and scolded her, I told you that the project was going well. Why didn't the Lu family show any signs of pulling out? I've long guessed that there was a problem on your side, but whenever I asked you about it, you always evaded the question. How old are you this year? Don't you know how to think for yourself? Are you still thinking about Lin Su? Let me tell you this, unless I'm dead, you can forget about being with Lin Su, for the rest of your life. Luo Hao was so angry that he sat back down with his hand clutching his chest. Liao Hong quickly patted his chest and advised him, Ying, it's not that I want to criticize you, but if the Lin family's kid likes you too, your father and I will take your childhood friendship into consideration and permit it. But look at that Lin family brat, he's so haughty. He's never had you or the Luo family in his eyes, but you still had to go after him. You offended the Lu family and caused the company to get into trouble now. Do you really want to drive your father to his grave? Before Liao Hong could finish her accusation, the servant at the door suddenly shouted, Mr. Lu is here. Chapter 40 You are listening at NovelFull.audio. A sudden appearance translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation The living room fell silent, and everyone spun around to look. They saw the tall and slender Lu Zhao, dressed in a business suit, walking in from the door. What are you doing here? Luo Ying's eyes lit up, and she immediately jumped up from the chair and pounced on him. Lu Zhao was still holding a briefcase in his hand. Realizing that he didn't have time to hand it to Zhang, he could only let go of the briefcase and let it fall to the ground. Then, he opened his arms and hugged her. I called Zhang and found out that you went back to your parents' house, so I rushed over as soon as I got off the plane. Luo Ying was still speechless after being criticized by Luo Hao and the others, but now that she saw Lu Zhao, she suddenly felt a little wronged. Then, why didn't you reply to my message just now and answer my video call? Lu Zhao patted her head. I fell asleep on the plane and didn't see your message. After I got off the plane, my phone was already out of battery. Luo Ying was sharp enough to catch the loophole in his words. You're lying. You just said you called Zhang. That was Xiao Ting. Lu Zhao was weary. Can you come down first? Everyone is watching. Luo Ying reluctantly jumped down from his body. Lu Zhao greeted Luo Hao, Dad, I'm sorry I'm late. The moment he saw Lu Zhao, Luo Hao, who had just been so angry that he was about to have a stroke, immediately simmered down. He nodded at Lu Zhao. It's fine as long as you're here. Luo Wan's eyes turned red with jealousy as she watched the intimate interaction between the two. Everyone said that she and her mother were vixens, having seduced Luo Hao to cast his own children aside and only care for them. However, only the mother and daughter knew that Luo Hao's heart was on Luo Ying and her brother, and he had always been on guard against them. Like Luo Ying and Lu Zhao's marriage, everyone knew that Lu Zhao was the ideal son-in-law, but Luo Ying was blind and didn't like Lu Zhao, so she kept making a fuss about not wanting to marry him. Liao Hong had asked Luo Hao indirectly that since Luo Ying was so unwilling, it was better to let Luo Wan marry into the Lu family. But, as soon as those words lingered in the air, Luo Hao immediately shot them down, saying that the person who was engaged to Lu Zhao was Luo Ying, and that was final. So, even though Luo Wan was crazy with jealousy, she could only watch begrudgingly as Luo Ying married Lu Zhao. She had thought that she would never have the chance to get close to Lu Zhao in this life, but, not long after they got married, she heard that the two were going to get a divorce. Luo Wan suddenly felt that her chance had come. She looked at Lu Zhao with doe eyes. Brother-in-law, people are saying that you and my sister have divorced, so I thought you would never come to the Luo family again. When Luo Hao heard this, he glared at her unhappily. She had truly prodded at a sore spot. Lu Zhao glanced sideways at Luo Ying, who pursed her lips. I've already told you several times that we're fine, but you just don't believe me and keep running your mouth off. However, Lu Zhao didn't answer the question. Instead, he looked at Luo Ying, which made Luo Wan even more certain that they were indeed up to something. She was afraid that they were putting up an act. However, she didn't think about it. If the two were really going to get a divorce, why would Lu Zhao work with Luo Ying to put on an act? Ahem. Luo Hao cleared his throat. Since you're fine, then that's good. Although he wanted to ask why they suddenly pulled out of the project since there was no conflict between the two, he saw Lu Zhao's tired face and held back. Come in and rest for a while. Luo Wan jumped out again. I'll go pour some tea for brother.in. Law. She went into the kitchen and took out Lu Zhao's favorite tea. Just as she was about to get a kettle, the helper next to her stopped her. It's freshly boiled. Be careful not to burn your hand. Luo Wan's hand paused, and she peeked out of the living room. She saw Luo Ying and Lu Zhao sitting affectionately on the sofa. Why did Luo Ying still want Lu Zhao, even after the divorce? An evil thought rose in Luo Wan's heart. If only Luo Ying wasn't here, then she would be the only daughter of the Luo family, and she could marry Lu Zhao. She put the teacup back and replaced it with a bigger purple clay teapot. It's rare for my brother-in-law to come today, so I'll show him my tea-making skills. A few minutes later, Luo Wan came out with a tea set and a kettle filled with boiling water on a large tray. She glanced at the two people on the sofa, who were laughing and talking, and then looked down at the carpet in the living room. A bright smile appeared on Luo Wan's face. Sister, brother-in-law, I'll show you guys a dance. The moment she fell, she pushed her hand forward, and the contents of the tray were all thrown at Luo Ying's face.